Okay, great, thank you. My name is Terrence Lee. I am the Science Director with Nisqually Reach Nature Center. I've been with this organization since 2009. I've been in my current capacity since 2014. So in addition to the Pigeon Guillemot survey programs, I coordinate and or partner on a number of other research projects, including forage fish surveys, larval crab surveys, ocean acidification, and we dabble in a couple other things as well. So, I will be doing a lot of behind the scenes work for the season. I will be available to contact throughout the season as you have needs, but by and large, a lot of our coordination will be happening through our interns. So we're glad we have a couple interns here. I'll start off by letting one of our former interns from last summer, John, introduce himself. And yeah, go ahead, John.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Townsend. And as Terrence said, I was an intern at the program last year, helping coordinate and schedule and do all the kind of behind the scenes work that it takes to get the surveys going. I stuck around throughout the winter and helped with quality control. And I just started grad school at Oregon State, 5 weeks ago. And so I am helping out because I know a little bit about the program as much as I can. So thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Anne.
Hi, folks. I'm Ann Mills. I've been with the program since 2013. We rounded up our first group of volunteers at that point, and I believe Hal was among them. He may be the only one here that was in that original group. And I've been doing Young's Cove a lot of the time, so I'm team lead there, and then I help with the coordination team. And I really enjoy working with all the volunteers, and of course, being out on the beach, you can't beat that.
Yeah, it's been great to have Anne, and we're very fortunate that she has decided to stick it out. So, all right, moving on down the list, we've got some other new interns with us today, which we're very excited to introduce them. So I'm going to go ahead and have Madison introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Madison. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a freshman at the University of Washington, majoring in business and intending to minor in environmental studies. This will be my first time interning at the Nisqually Reach Nature Center over the summer, and I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, we're happy to have Madison here. And all right, next we have Kayla.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla Tomlinson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a junior at the Evergreen State College and kind of majoring in environmental studies and natural sciences. I'm really excited to learn more about Pigeon Guillemots and working with all of you.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here, Kayla, and hopefully we're going to have a third intern as well. We're still working on that. Okay, moving on. So let's talk a little bit about Nisqually Reach Nature Center. So we're a small nonprofit. We focus on education and research. We've been doing education and research for the past 40 years, and our goal is to connect people with nature using both of these programs. And so we're really excited to have all of you here to be participating in this citizen science research. This program in particular is one of fairly significant importance. The state, the Puget Sound Partnership, which is one of the state agencies, they're responsible for essentially restoring the health of Puget Sound. And one of the ways that they are able to do that is by the use of various biological, chemical, physical, economic, and social indicators. And so one of the biological indicators is the Pigeon Guillemot is one of 4 different seabird species in this state. that is used as a way to gauge the health of Puget Sound. And these birds are typically present year-round. So that's one of the reasons why they are designated as an indicator species, but they are also dependent on prey species, mainly sculpin and gunnels, which are very abundant. And for that reason, and the fact that they breed here in Puget Sound, they're just very stable birds to use as an indicator. So like I said, this program has been going on for quite some time, and Anne started this program in 2013, and we actually are not the first folks to be involved with this program. Anne actually met one of the founders of the program up on Whidbey back when she was still working for the Thurston Conservation District in the South Sound Green program, and she put it on her bucket list to participate in these surveys. And you know, she needed a sponsoring organization, and it just so happens that she ran into Daniel Hull, our executive director, who can't be here today. At the time, we were just in the process of having established the Nisqually Reach Aquatic Reserve in partnership with the Department of Natural Resources. And so part of that process was the formation of what was then called the Citizen Stewardship Committee, which is still in existence today. And that group is a group of concerned citizens who meet on a monthly basis to discuss any and all issues that are pertinent to the aquatic reserve. I won't really go into details about the aquatic reserve for today's meeting, but if you're more interested in having information about that, I am more than happy to share that information out. We survey here in South Puget Sound, and our goal is to conduct long-term monitoring of a variety of different habitats and colonies within South Sound. So we survey from as far as the Nisqually area, all the way out to Harstein Island, and a little bit into other areas like Totten Inlet. So it's a pretty wide range of areas. We currently have 16 colonies that we are surveying, and you can check out our website to see a map of where some of those colonies are. And so our season is going to be starting in June, and it will continue through August. And so our goal is to conduct weekly surveys so that we can get an estimate of population abundance. This data is used by the Puget Sound Partnership as a way to determine the overall statewide population trend for this species. So there are actually 7 different groups, including our group, that are studying these birds, and they're all volunteer-based programs. And so we're in a constant expansion, and we are looking at the potential for other areas to join in on this effort. But today we will focus on what we do here in South Puget Sound. So with that, we're going to dive right into the protocol. So there is a change from the previous year. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so folks can follow along here. And here we go. So with the protocol, one of the things that we always try and do is make sure that everything is as clear as it can be. And hopefully, can you all see the protocol on the screen? Okay, great.
Yes.
Excellent. I've got two screens going here, so I just want to make sure that I'm not seeing something different than everyone else. So yeah, there's a couple key parts that have received some updates, notably the disturbance, and then just more of a clarification on the counting of the birds. So I'm not going to go through this whole entire thing. I'm just going to focus on some of the key parts of this. And we do actually have a South Sound specific version of the protocol. So that will be available on our website. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to, safety, that's a huge thing. We do try and provide information for everyone so that you know what the tides are and that you have your survey planned out far enough in advance that you won't be caught by surprise if you've looked up all this information. And we'll kind of touch back on this a little bit later during the logistics and colony team coordination section of the training. That said, the next part is really about timing of the survey. So we have a lot of flexibility in the early morning hours, and we can start our survey anytime from daylight all the way, or daybreak, all the way through to 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock is our absolute cutoff for when we need to start. That ensures that we have consistency with our data collection across the entire region. And so, this is something that you would be discussing with your team. So for folks who are returning from last year, as you recall, we've since switched to a colony level survey as opposed to doing the site level surveys, which we had previously done. I know some of you missed those more flexible times with the site level surveys, but this is for the purpose of ensuring that we have consistent and comparable data across our little region here in South Sound, but also as an entire project for the entire COHC. So you're going to do a 1 hour survey, and prior to that survey, you're going to want to budget approximately 15 minutes to give the birds a chance to become acclimated to your presence. So if you do arrive and there are birds that spook, you definitely want to find a good spot where you can easily see the birds on the water, as well as any of the burrows which they might be using. So typically you're going to be off to the side and you're going to stay in that position for the remainder of the survey. And there's some fudge room with this in terms of, if you see no birds when you arrive, well, you could literally just start right then and there because you're not disturbing anything. But generally speaking, if you see birds, even if they don't react, it's usually good just to give that 15-minute period. So definitely make a concerted effort to get on the beach on time and be ready to go by 7:45 at the very latest. Okay, so you're going to be, if you're going to be a regular, you're going to be surveying 10 times during the season. Now, there is some variability in that. There are some colonies that start sooner. You probably have some colonies that are going to start seeing fish deliveries here in 3 weeks, which is really kind of interesting, but it's not unprecedented. We do always have a couple colonies that they just get an earlier start. And so the start week of this season is, for our area, it's going to be Sunday, May 29th. And, obviously that's Memorial Day weekend. So we're not going to expect everyone to survey on that weekend. So one of the key changes this year, and I know we've kind of gone back and forth on this, but one of the reasons why we were encouraging everyone to come to this training, regardless of whether you've been doing this since not quite the dawn of time, but since the very beginning of this project, or whether you're brand new, is that our survey week spans Sunday through Saturday. And that's really important to ensure that we have consistency within our region and across all regions. And so we will definitely be following up with all of the teams to make sure that we have your schedules all figured out, and that you have enough help to make sure that you're able to do it. And if you don't have the help, we can work with you to figure out what kind of books we can plug in to fill those gaps. So the survey will continue for 10 weeks. Now there are some colonies, like I said, that start earlier, so they may finish up sooner. And the criteria for determining whether a colony is ready for shutting down is having 2 consecutive weeks without any burrow activity or any birds that are on the water holding fish. So that second part, the birds on the water holding fish, that's a bit of a newer piece of guidance that we've been following, because the general assumption is that if there's a bird on the water with a fish, it means that there's probably still a chicken in the burrow. And that seems like a fairly reasonable assumption. So that may extend your season a little bit beyond 10 weeks. And, it's definitely going to be important for you to kind of make sure you get your data in a timely fashion, so that way we can help you close out that colony sooner rather than later, and you don't have to do any extra surveys. As far as noting what the different active and occupied burrows are, we will share out with each team a photo of the bluff, and we'll work with you to come up with some sort of a system for identification. You can pre-assign identifiers to your burrows if you want, or you can just kind of mark things as you go. And the key thing is to make sure that, one, you are consistent with your use of identifiers. So, whatever you consider to be burrows 1, 2, and 3, those will stay as burrows 1, 2, 3 for the remainder of season. We don't do any switching around. And this is really important, because if you have someone who's going to be a substitute for you at any point in the season, they're going to need this information. So part of what we definitely need you to help, or part of what we need you to do, is to mark on your map or your photo what burrows are active and what IDs you're using and recording on your data sheets. So that way, if we do have a substitute, this is something that can be shared with them, and then we can make sure that all the data will be consistent from week to week. So a little clarification as far as what is active versus what is not active. So basically, a bird has to go completely into the burrow and disappear for a burrow to be considered active. And once a burrow is active, it will always be active. And then, like I said, it will retain whatever identifier you have assigned to it. There's 2 types of burrow activity that we are focused on. The first one is the no prey visit. So this is going to be more common in the early season. So for the most part in June, this is what you're most likely to observe. There may be periods where you may see very few to no burrow activity at all. And this is something that you're probably going to run into for at least a few weeks out of the whole season. There are some colonies that do start later. There's also colonies that, for various reasons, are just less active. Now, with respect to the other type of burrow activity, the fish deliveries, this is one of the key aspects of the survey that we really try and get some detailed information on. So there are three main species or categories of fish that we are interested in. I know there's been some discussion about the gunnel category and the other category, but to simplify it, basically anything that's long, skinny, flat and noodly and limp, that's a gunnel. Anything that's kind of short, stout, more typically fish looking with a large head and a tapered body, that is a sculpin. And then we have our others, which will actually show you the photos of these when we go through the data sheet itself. And the other comprises basically everything else. But it also includes any fish that you observe being delivered that, you know, it just happened in the blink of an eye and you couldn't catch seeing exactly what type of fish that was. So that might be a sculpin, might be a gunnel. Maybe it's just you're staring into the morning sun, so you're blinded by the light and you can't see well. And that happens too. So just record as much information as you can about what that fish looked like, and that might be able to help us give enough clues to figure out what it was. Okay, moving on. So substitute surveyors, you know, we definitely encourage the teams to self-organize, and you know, if you're not able to get out, we definitely would be happy if, you know, you already have someone who's able to back you up. And if you don't have anyone who can do that, that's where you can reach out to the coordination team and let us know. And we can work with you to find someone to help out, whether that's going to be an intern, whether that's going to be another volunteer. We can be to that. We'll be just making sure that they are familiar with the site that you're surveying. So, okay, moving on here. So as far as recording data, obviously for folks who are new, there might be aspects of the survey that may not be as clear to you as far as how to handle that. And that's fine. Each team will have a team lead. And so part of the process that we go through with the survey is to make sure that at the end of the survey, we have a little meeting to discuss what everyone saw during the survey. And we just try and make sure that if anyone saw something that they didn't quite, you know what to do about, you know, we can, as a group, discuss how to handle that. Some of them might be easy to handle, like, oh, you know, there was maybe an issue of counting birds because you had a few birds that were overlapping within your counting areas. So that's one of the more common issues that we try and resolve during these post-survey meetings. And really, these meetings are meant to provide a field level of initial data validation. So ideally, you're able to resolve as many issues as possible while you have every person there and you can hash things out, as opposed to, you know, after the fact, trying to sort things out. And this is going to be something that's going to be more important this year than in previous years. And we'll discuss that a little bit more later. So, all right, we do have some informational brochures that folks can hand out. So for new folks who don't have any, please reach out to us and we can get you a few. And you know, this is definitely great, whether you're on the beach or whether you're, you know, just outside of the survey, you know, just casually talking to people about what you do. Maybe, you know, that's a way for you to recruit some friends or, you know, people who might be curious about what you do. Okay, so one of the aspects of the survey that is a change for this year, which is a pretty big change, is we are moving to get our data entered and checked on a more frequent basis. So we're asking volunteers to do the surveys and then go out and or come back from the surveys and get the data entered into Survey 123 as soon as possible. And there's a few reasons for this. So one, like I mentioned earlier, this data is used by the Puget Sound Partnership. They rely on this information for their population abundance estimate status trend update. And so without this data being compiled and entered and checked in a timely manner, they aren't able to provide this update in a timely fashion. So they're basically needing this data. And this also helps us internally because it will allow us to avoid falling too far behind with our quality control process. Last year was a bit of an anomaly because of just what went on with the Survey 123 system. So we've already met with Department of Fish and Wildlife, and we've been assured that the system should be ready to go by mid-May. So there's additional notes here. I'm not going to read through them all. One of the things that I do want to highlight is about the counting of the guillemots themselves. So some folks are really good at seeing these birds at a distance and being able to identify them just because they're familiar. So what we're providing as guidance for which birds to count, which birds to exclude is essentially, if you can see the bird with your naked eye and you can see all of its identifying characteristics, those are birds that you can count. Now, if you see some bird that's way, way, way out there, like, you know, separated from the group, and, you know, you need binoculars to verify its identification, that's where we don't really want to count those birds. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, why does a handful of birds make a difference? So this goes back to the issue of making sure that we're doing this as consistently as we can. Now, we do understand that there are some colonies where there are unique dynamics in play, such as very shallow beaches where the tide goes way, way out. And so if you're surfing on a low tide, your birds are way, way out. So we can definitely work with you on really kind of dialing in how to do those counts. So we certainly would kind of go out with you, and we can try and just get on the same page about really making that decision on, you know, how that process should work. And this is really true for a lot of the colonies, because each colony can be unique in its own way. So, you know, if you're feeling like, hey, I really would like to be able to get calibrated on how to do the counts, that's certainly something that we can do. So I know I went a little bit over here. I'm going to stop sharing and I'll open it up for questions. you feel free to use the chat, raise your hand. And I can't see everyone here, so
Terrence?
yes.
Terrence, the counting, I think this is helpful. It's a little bit more detailed than it was last survey season. So that's a helpful thing. Are we going to be able to print off the things that you're showing?
Yes.
The screen sharing? Okay, that's great.
So John's going to go ahead and put a link to where all of these materials are, and we will also have them available on our website too. So we will have the more detailed version of the datasheet instructions on our website too. So kind of with these documents that we are showing you today, these are from the Salish C. Guillemot Network website. I didn't really mention what this group is, but basically all 7 regions, we meet on a regular basis, and these are the standardized documents that we have developed. But like I said, we've been doing this for 10 years, so we kind of have a refined approach to how we do things. It's not to say that there's anything wrong with any of the documents here, but you know, every region's a little bit different, so we try and make sure that we're able to account for that.
Are you going to go over how to do the enter the information in survey 123 today, or?
No, not today. So there is actually a training for that, and that's going to be on, let me pull up my calendar, the 10th, which I think is a Wednesday. Yeah, so that's next Wednesday, and that's at 7 o'clock. I will be sending out a follow-up email after this training with the links, and that'll be sent directly to any of the folks who might be doing data entry and or any folks who might be needing the administrative accounts to do the editing of data. So one of the key aspects of the data entry is that as people found out last year, you can, if you just have a basic account, you can only enter data. So you cannot fix any mistakes that you make. You'll have to let us know. It's kind of a, not quite a silly system, but we understand that you know, it's not a perfect system. So just bear with us. You know, this is something that works for Department of Fish and Wildlife. So you know, we're just trying to work with them to figure out what's best. So yeah, the training for the regional admins is the following Wednesday, the 17th at 7. And both of those are Zoom meetings. So like I said, we will share out that information. See, any other questions here?
I had one question.
Yeah.
I just wanted to confirm, I thought you said the survey was going to be Sunday through Saturday.
Correct.
But on it's Sunday through Saturday.
Yes.
Okay, because I'm plugging in my dates that I'm available to do, and it's showing Monday through Sunday. So I just wanted to double check that.
Right. That was a change.
A recent
That
change.
happened. Yeah, that was a recent change.
Okay.
So we apologize that we kind of, this was something that was decided on by the Salish C. Guillemot Network, which, you know,
that's fine.
A little bit, I mean, in the end, it's just about, you know, making sure that everyone's doing, when they say, oh, you know, we're doing a survey on week 1, that means everyone's talking about the same week.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to reconfirm, you're saying only count the birds, because I've been doing this for a few years, and I would use, I could tell that there was a bird out there and it was probably a Pigeon Guillemot, but maybe wanting to confirm with my binoculars. So you're kind of saying don't count those birds if they're too far away to positively identify with your naked eye.
Right. This has been
It's a tricky one.
a tricky issue for sure, because a lot of colonies, you don't have any sort of convenient landmark, or not really a landmark, any sort of physical object that you can use to gauge distance. And we decided that distance wasn't going to be a suitable way to make that determination as far as what birds to count, what birds to exclude. And obviously everyone's binoculars, some have better binoculars than others. So, we try to avoid having the issue of some people can see birds really, really far away because their optics are just amazing. And others, their optics might not be as good, so they can't see nearly as well. So, obviously everyone's vision's different too. So, but at least we figured.
It definitely makes it easier to know which ones to count, though, because you're right. There's no landmark. It's like, I can't tell how far that is because I got really good binoculars and I can see long ways.
Yeah,
so my numbers are definitely
your friends over at Big Fish Trap.
Yes, I could.
But yeah, no, I mean, obviously we're going to miss some birds in the process, and that's just normal.
Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to ask is, I noticed on the new data sheets, there's very little room for survey notes for the journal. And am I guessing that really you just want the data, not so much the commentary?
So this was a back and forth. I lobbied for a reformatting of the data sheet to allow for more room for general notes, because I understand that there are instances where sometimes you just have a lot to write. This wasn't any design to not include that information. So it's something that I will be lobbying for again next year. It's just
go ahead and still include your notes. I will just write it on a different piece of paper. Notes.
And really, obviously,
and then enter it.
1, 2, 3. It's an electronic data form,
right?
So you have unlimited, almost unlimited space with entering information there. So it is a little unfortunate that space is at a premium on this data sheet. But like I said, I'm going to keep poking away and trying to convince everyone's like, hey, here's a version that I think would work better.
And that's okay. I just didn't want to be putting a bunch of notes in when they didn't really want it. I just put the actual data.
2 lines is frankly very minimal.
Yeah, it is.
And that you can always just write it on an extra piece of paper, just catch it.
Okay. Well, once I enter it into the 1, 2, 3, I mean, usually what I do is I end up writing at the bottom of the burrow data, because I never fill up, because right now I only have a few burrows because we lost some this winter. So I'll be writing probably in that lower section.
Yeah,
because you still want the hard copy as well as our data entry.
That's correct. Yeah, well, I mean, hard or electronic copy, whichever.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
That was it.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm not sure who was next. Maria, go ahead.
Hi, I had a question about doing the count at Edgewater. We have one heck of a time trying to get the perspective correct across that very long beach, so that I fear we are double counting some of the birds. Is it possible for us to have everyone stretched along the colony from A to C or D, all count all the birds at each point count? We have one person who has a spotting scope, and sometimes the birds get behind one of the shellfish barges. And if you're, say, in B, you can't see the birds behind the shellfish barge, but the person down at A with a spotting scope can see down the beach and count those birds. So would it be acceptable to do a all team count for those 3-point counts, beginning, middle, and end?
I mean, ultimately, that's what your data sheet will have, is a combined count. So how you go about that, whatever works best for you, we don't really have any objection to, as long as you stay within the protocol. So spotting scope, that kind of gets into a little bit of a gray area. You know, we don't want you spotting the birds that are way, way, way out there, like we discussed.
No, no.
Yeah, you know, if it's just a matter of like, oh, someone's down at A and they're using the scope to shoot over to B because they can see behind the barge. As long as you're able to kind of verify that with the other folks at the other sections, you know, I have no problem with that.
Okay, so that means each, the data sheets for A, B, and C, and maybe D do not have to have that particular wedge of birds counted. Then it can be the total colony. Right?
It's still helpful to have the individual counts for each wedge, so to speak. It just gives us a rough idea of how you're coming up with the numbers. And if you're ever like uncertain, like feel free to reach out to us. I'm somewhat close, only 20 minutes away-ish. So I'd be happy to go out and, you know, spend time to figure that out. And we can do that outside of survey hour too, if you feel that that's more conducive to figuring that out. Okay, looks like
Al?
had a question.
Couple things. The first, and of course, Butterball not being a normal area anyway, but over the years of doing the same place, we became pretty familiar with, regardless of where the bird was, you knew whether it was part of your group or not. You know, at the low tides, they may be out here, but gained a familiarity. You almost knew you know, had a feel for the birds individually, that you knew which were yours and which weren't when you made those counts. But that was, you know, over time, you get used to seeing where they are and where they're going.
Yeah, no, that's really invaluable information. And I would certainly encourage you to work with the other folks on the Butterball team to potentially, you know, kind of help train them on, you know, getting to that same level, because they haven't done the surveys nearly as long as the two of you have. And I think that's, to me, being consistent is probably more important than, say, like, oh, you know, you were including these two birds that I wouldn't have counted. I think as long as you're doing it the same, that's the biggest thing. So yeah. If you're a tiny bit wrong, like, okay, at least you're all in the same boat, and we can work with that, as opposed to if you're all doing it slightly differently, then it becomes a little harder to reconcile.
The other question I have about that survey 1, 2, 3 training, do you need to attend both?
No. So the training on the 10th, that is just for folks who are doing the data entry. The training on the 17th is for folks who are doing any of the quality control work. which is a pretty small group of folks.
Okay.
So unless you want to be a part of that team.
No.
We're going to be out of the country that day.
Okay, all right, yeah. And these trainings will be recorded as well. So if there's folks here who are like, hey, you know, I've already got plans for the 10th, that's totally fine. So, okay. John, did you have something really quick?
I did. I just wanted to add really quickly, it's really more about the consistency of how you get the data. The numbers that you come up with if you miss a couple birds, I mean, ultimately these are estimates, and the difference in those numbers when it comes to the mathematics is nothing. The important part is that the consistency has remained the same throughout, you know, kind of the setup. So remember that if birds are missed a little bit, but you're staying more consistent with what's going on, that's less of a problem than if everyone's trying to count every bird, but they're not being consistent with how they're doing it. So.
Okay, great. We ran a few minutes over, so we've got a couple minutes before our next segment. So everyone can kind of take a couple minute break, and then we will launch into the next section, which will be going through the data sheet. Okay, so the data sheet, yes, it is different. And well, the information that you'll be recording is the same. It's just it looks different because it's just a different format. So colony name, that's the same as what we've done before. You know, if you're filling this out for a specific site, you know, just put the colony name plus A or B or whatever designation, north, south. Survey date, pretty self-explanatory there. And then survey week, like I mentioned, the season starts the week of May 29th. So, you know, if you're subbing for someone else, you know, you can definitely consult from our website, where we'll have a little mini calendar that you can look at to see what week it is. Yeah. Okay, start time. So this is something that we want to kind of clarify, because we did see some data sheets where it looked like there might have been folks who were recording when they got to the beach as opposed to when they started the survey. So start time is the start time of the survey itself. So it does not include any of the settling time, whether that's 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you decide on. Okay, the lead name, AKA the team lead. The way that we had it previously, it really still applies here. And this is going to be spelled out in the version of the datasheet instructions that we will have on our website. So if someone is designated as the team lead, they are typically going to be people who are also surveying. So make sure that their name is also listed down below in the observers. Make sure that you write full names, because if someone just puts down Ann, well, we have several Anns in this program. And, you know, it would just make things easier for us. Also, something that we find that can be helpful in terms of being able to figure out the total volunteer time is we just kind of tally up the numbers for each person after their name. And then that allows the team lead who compiles the data sheet to be able to easily come up with that total that they can put in the box on the right. As far as tide goes, there's all sorts of different websites, programs that you can use to look up this information. Our personal favorite is deepzoom.com. I don't think we really have time to kind of do a full demo of that today. But if folks are interested in seeing how that works. We encourage you to kind of hang around after the training, and then we can do a quick little demo that we're going to record. But yeah, that should be hopefully self-explanatory for folks who have already done the survey, and then for anyone who is less familiar with tides, yeah, we can work with you to kind of get dialed in on how to do that. And the tide information is coinciding with the start of your survey. So whatever your start time is, that's the basis for whatever tide height that you enter. Okay, moving on to the counts. So as it was asked about earlier, you do need to do 3 counts. So at the very beginning of the survey, you do your count. Now, obviously, there are some colonies that are much larger, so you're a little more spread out. This is something that you would need to discuss before the survey as a team to decide how you're going to do the counts, because as it was mentioned, there are some, actually, there's a number of colonies where it's just open water in front of you. So how do you create that imaginary line? There's ways to do that, and your team lead will be responsible for making that determination. And as I mentioned, at the end, during your debrief or your post-survey meeting, these are the things that you can discuss. So if you have a few birds in kind of that no man's land, that's where you can hash things out after the survey and be like, hey, for the middle count, I counted 5 birds in my area, but I saw 3 birds that were kind of in the middle. And then, what did you get? Like, because everyone has a slightly different perspective. It's not always cut and dry. So, our goal is to make sure that we're able to come up with a cumulative count for an entire colony that is reflective of what's there, but excludes any of the birds that are way offshore and considered to be disassociated with the colony. Okay, moving on to disturbances. So this is always something that takes a lot of effort to tease out nuances. And so we certainly encourage folks to make sure that when you're recording information, the beginning time is when the birds react. This may or may not be synonymous with the cause of the disturbance. So probably the #1 disturbance are eagles. And usually the reaction is very quick. There's other cases where maybe there's a very large vessel passing by and it throws up a big wake. And well, it's going to take some time for the waves to hit the shore. And some of the birds might react, but some of the birds might not. So this is where recording detailed notes is going to be helpful. There's been a lot of internal discussion about how to handle this, and we do try and make sure that whatever we end up deciding on, that we're applying a consistent approach to it. So the general consensus right now is that we want to be documenting what's happening on the site level, but we are interested in kind of what's happening from a colony level. And this is something that we're going to have continued discussions about through the Use Guillemot network. So stay tuned because there might be some refined guidance regarding this. Another thing to note about the end time for the disturbance is that as long as approximately 40% of the birds that were affected return to the area, we consider that to be the end. Now, if this happens before the survey is complete, then you can write yes or Y for indicating that, you know, it finished before the survey ended. Now, if it is the case that, you know, maybe later in your survey, there was a disturbance, and by 9 o'clock when you're done, birds are like still way offshore, then you would note that by indicating N for no. And these are some of the situations with surveying the disturbances where we definitely encourage you to discuss this as a team to really suss out, okay, what was a disturbance, what was not a disturbance. We're basically looking for a reaction from the majority of the birds. And like I said, this is still something that we are discussing internally to refine more, because it's probably one of the most challenging aspects of the survey. And just kind of give you a little bit of perspective on our end internally. When we do our quality control, we really need detailed information that helps support why you considered something a disturbance. So, you know, without that information, we end up having to disqualify some of the data. So do keep that in mind. And one last thing that I'll mention about disturbances, my least favorite is other cause or unknown. Actually, no, other cause, there are some legitimate ones, but unknown is probably the one that I really encourage you to try and like keep your head on the swivel, because sometimes disturbance will happen and you won't necessarily recognize it. So this is where you can work as a team. Maybe you see something happen with the birds, but you're like, I didn't see what made that happen. So you can talk with your teammates at the end and be like, hey, did you see that too? Like maybe they saw the cause. And that way we can minimize the number of times that we use the unknown category. We definitely want to discourage the use of that category because it's pretty vague. Okay, moving on. So burrow activity. You're going to record all the data for each individual burrow on a single line. So if you have 5 different burrows that are active during your survey, you'll be recording the information for each one of those burrows on separate lines. Now you can see in the example here that there are multiple fish deliveries and multiple burrow visits to this one burrow. This is just a hypothetical. It's less likely that you would actually see this in reality, but this is just for training purposes. And something to note is that you'll notice that the gunnel mentions a species that we have mentioned in previous emails, which is the prickleback. The prickleback looks similar to a gunnel. It is long, but it is fat. And it is dangly like a noodle. So it is potentially easily confused to folks who may not know what a prickleback is. So basically, if you see a fish that's long, skinny, or fat, and limp, dangling from the bird's beak, because this is what they do, for folks who haven't seen these birds before, there's actually no other bird that I'm aware of, unless someone knows, that when they're feeding their young, they will catch a fish and they will just hold it in their mouth. And sometimes you will see birds that will hold the fish in their mouth for a whole entire hour. If you see that, make a note of that. That's really important to know, especially for the surveys where you have no burrow activity, because that is really critical information for us to be able to make some sort of inference to assume that, okay, there's probably burrow activity. We're just not seeing it for this 1 hour snapshot this week. Okay, I mentioned briefly the other and the unknown, and I'll reiterate that if you see a fish delivery, but you're unable to confirm what kind of fish the bird brought in, this is where it goes. Or if you see a fish that you just have no clue what it is, this is also where it goes. Now, if it's one of the latter, we definitely encourage you to record some notes that describe, basic identifying information, like, what's its general shape? Is it long and skinny, or is it more broad? What color is it? Size is relative because it's less important of a indicator of identification. But yeah, basically anything that might help us in being able to make an educated guess as to what it was that you might have been seeing. It doesn't guarantee that we'll be able to make a positive ID, but the more information, the better the chance that we can actually do that. Burrow visits. I do want to mention something that I think the experienced volunteers have this down, but just for everyone's sake, we want to make sure that you understand that the bird visiting the burrow has to completely go into the burrow. So to use an analogy, this is like you drive home, you get out of your car, you open the front door, you go in the house, you close the door. This is not, you get out of your car and you sit on the porch. That doesn't count. So if a bird just flies to the burrow, but it's just sitting at the entrance or it's sitting on the ledge nearby, that is good and interesting information, but it does not count as a burrow visit. They have to completely disappear into the hole. And then that's where we can do that. There is one instance where you can record a burrow visit for a bird that's coming out of the hole. And the only time you do that is when you have not seen any kind of activity for that burrow in the entire survey hour. So if that's the first thing that you see for that burrow, then that counts. Otherwise, if you saw the burrow visit at 8:10, but then you see the bird come out at 8:12, we completely ignore the 8:12, but we record the 8:10. If you see multiple birds enter your burrow with or without fish, that is also important to record. So, if you have a double, record that same time twice. That helps us to know, oh, okay, this counts as this many visits as opposed to just one. Let's see here. And then, yeah, burrow notes can be any information that's specific to a specific burrow, or it can be general notes like, wow, there's a lot of ledge sitting, or there's a lot of flybys. Flybys are another thing that we're interested in, because if for a whole survey, you don't see any fish deliveries, but you see flybys, that's something that we can still use to infer that, okay, there's interest there. Whether or not they actually went in during the survey hour, that's another issue. But it just kind of helps give us a more complete picture of what's going on. So, okay. Actually, it's going back up to the top. So some of you might have noticed that the little check box got moved to the bottom. That's the box. So if there's nothing happening at your burrows for that hour, you can check that box, and then that helps us because we don't have to freak out and be like, where's page 2? Typically when you're sending in your data sheets to us, we're always looking for the front and the back. So we know that some folks do send them as separate files. So, make sure you check that box, because then we can be like, okay, we don't have to look for page 2 that doesn't exist. And if you do have a second page, make sure you send that in, because if you don't have that box checked and we only get one page, you'll be hearing from us. So, okay, all right. Let's go into questions. Well, I must have stunned
Hey,
everyone.
Terrence, I
Yeah.
thought I would add a clarification about notes, that there's not a lot of room and what's important and what's not. You've indicated a lot of those. Basically, we don't need a narrative of, 4 birds came here, 2 birds went there, describing all the movement of the birds. We do not need that. However, most burrow activity that happens before the survey hour or after the survey hour is good to know. If there's a fish delivery before the hour, that's good to know, because official data might not say that's an active burrow of a chick, but we know that burrow has a chick if there was fish delivery that went in there, even if it was before or after the hour. So yeah, I think all burrow activity before or after the hour, during the settle time or right when you leave, is good to know in the know, especially when you leave. Sometimes they'll hold the fish, and then as soon as you turn your back and start to walk away, in they go with the fish.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Terrence, there's a couple of questions in the chat if you want to look at them.
Yeah, you want to just roll through the first one there? I've got a split screen here.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Is a disturbance considered only when birds fly away, or would being more alert be considered a disturbance?
Generally, displacement is the main criteria that we focus on. So they can fly away, they can dive. I think alertness is probably a little bit too subtle to necessarily detect consistently and easily. So, yeah.
And then does each volunteer fill out a data sheet, or only the lead volunteer?
So if you're working on or if you're surveying a colony with multiple sites, each team for each site will fill out one data sheet. So each of those sheets will then be compiled into one master sheet. And that's one of the objectives of the post-survey meeting, is to sort everything out, come up with a final cumulative count, and then address any issues that might come up. So no, not every single volunteer needs to fill out a data sheet. You can, if you're not responsible for the data sheet, you can still record notes on a separate piece of paper, and you can share that with whoever on your team is recording that information. So.
And then does it count as a burrow visit if you can see one leave the burrow shortly after the start of the survey?
So the only time that would count is if for that specific burrow, if you did not see any birds go in at all prior to that observation of a bird leaving the burrow. But once you see a bird go in, it's we don't count anything for any birds that are exiting, because these birds, whether they're male, whether they're female, whether they're subadults, we have no way to tell them apart. They are all virtually identical. So that's one of the biggest reasons why we don't count any birds that are exiting unless nothing else has entered prior.
All right, and then it says, do all data sheets for each site have to be submitted online or photocopied and emailed, or just the compilation
You want to
for the entire survey? Pardon me?
You want to take that one, John?
Yeah, so it's from a quality control standpoint, it's best to have them all. So if the lead has each and every single one of them, that's great to send them in, and then you can let us deal with what we need and do. And obviously, if things come up, the compilation is the most important. But again, if we can have all of them, that helps immensely on the quality control side of things.
Great. Any more questions in the chat?
I'd like to
That's
add
in the
one.
chat.
Go ahead.
I just said there's no more questions in the chat.
I'd like to add one thing that's really important when we're doing entry in survey 1, 2, 3. The protocol is that the burrow ID needs to be, for any letters that you use, they need to be caps, uppercase only. So always use uppercase. If you have A, B, C, always use uppercase. And the maximum of 3 digits. So most of the time it's going to be, A2 or C3. And that's 2 digits. You're actually allowed one more. We have one we call flapjack, and so it's FL, but that has to be all caps. So that's that happens in survey 1, 2, 3, where if you do it differently, it'll look like a different burrow. So I just learned that last year. Good to know.
Great. Okay. Well, that brings us to the mock scenario, and looks like Anne will be leading us through this exercise.
Okay, so Terrence, I understand we're going to go to breakout rooms to do this.
Do you want to explain what we're doing, and then we can do the breakouts?
Okay, I hope John and Terrence each have a copy out of the drive or something. It's basically a little quiz. It's practice data, entering data on the sheet. And so we give you a little problem. We say, okay, a bird entered at such and such time. What do you write on your sheet? So it's just practice. How do you record something? And some of them are some of the finer points that Terrence has discussed that people might come up with by showing Dr. Hewitt to record that. And then I also have the answer sheet. So hopefully we can, our plan for this little time was, since we didn't get introductions at the beginning, that in small groups we can kind of get acquainted with a few of you. And then John, Terrence, and I will go through the mock scenario. We'll just, however you want to do it, we'll just read the question and talk about the answer, and then affirm or add information as needed. So they can be little discussions. So
I have one question.
John and Terrence, have you found a copy of each?
Looks like Marta has a question.
Marta, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. The photo to use for the borough IDs? Is that something you're gonna have for us, or
Yes.
okay? So they'll be numbered already, which is which.
The team can decide how it's done.
Scenarios. So in this particular scenario, the settle time, that is the time before the survey, was 7:30 to 7:45. The survey began at 7:45 and ended at 8:45. Now, I don't want to wait a whole bunch of time, so some people just shout out an answer, or stick it in the chat, but I can't see the chat and my hearing's not great, so good luck. At 7:38, during the settle time, PGU enters borough number 4.
I think I would enter that in notes
Yep.
without recording it as an actual visit. And
Good, thank you. You know what? This isn't the version I wanted because I changed it. Oh well. B, at 7:49, a PGU flies up to borough 5, but doesn't enter. It's perched on a ledge at the entrance, visible.
Notes again.
Notes.
That goes in the notes, right? Because it was not an actual visit, but it was during the survey hour, but it was not an actual visit because it didn't go in all the way. Okay, at 7:52, a PGU visits borough 2 without fray.
Yes, enter the data.
As a borough visit.
Mhm.
Yes, and it goes in the no fray column. And what you put there is the time, just as it's written there, 7:52. Okay, at 7:55, a PGU delivers an unknown fish to borough 3.
Yes, you would enter it in the data. Borough visit with unknown fish.
Right,
And the
put
time.
an unknown column, and so you start a new line for each borough. Okay,
I don't have that.
so and then you just put the time in there.
I missed that one.
A bird with a gunnel enters borough number 3 at 8:01 and leaves the borough without the fish a minute later.
It's also a prey
Borough
delivery,
visit.
borough visit. But you
And
don't
then it-
indicate that left.
you put an N,
No.
right?
You put
Yes, you know why?
No.
Okay, I'm not catching all the comments, but okay, so you put a comma. We already had 7:55. So we already had one for borough number 3. Well, that was unknown, never mind.
No.
And this one is a gunnel, so it goes in the gunnel column, 8:01. Okay,
Mhm.
2 PGU with gunnels, 2. Each has a gunnel. Enter borough 2 at 8:12. What do I write?
so would you write 8:12 twice?
Yes,
Okay, for borough
And-
number 2.
and you
Yeah,
put a
after gunnel.
comma, and it's on the gunnel column.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So you might have several different types of visits. Well, you might have several gunnels for a given borough, and you write a comma between each one. Okay, at 8:20, a bird exits borough number 5. It was not seen entering the borough during or before the survey hour.
You're still recorded as a borough visit with that exit time because there was no other birds that visited number 5.
Yes, that's the only time that you record an exit is when you did not see a bird go into that borough during the survey hour. Okay, at 8:40, a PGU with a gunnel in its mouth flies near borough number 4, but does not deliver the fish.
Oops. Goes in notes.
Right, that's called an attempted or aborted delivery, and it's important to know. I mean, it may be delivered later, that same fish. That bird may go out and land in the water and come back later. But at this point, it's an aborted delivery. The survey ends at 8:45. The PGU that held a gunnel for the last 30 minutes enters a burrow with the fish at 8:50.
Notes.
Notes.
Yeah, it's after the survey hour. That's good to know. We do want it in the notes. Okay, I have, thanks to Edith, I have a little quickie, a little something on the lighter side, and this is how we conduct ourselves, about how we conduct ourselves on the beach. It's August 3rd. You arrive at the survey site at 7:45. Weather conditions are somewhat foggy, but allow enough visibility to survey the site. At 7:52, you spot the ferry Kalakala emerging from the mist, headed directly toward the PGU. You are preparing to count. You're so shocked at seeing what you later realize is the phantom ferry that you kick over the folding chair you brought with you, yell excitedly at your survey partner, waving your arms, pointing and running in circles. The PGU, unfortunately, scatter and do not return until 8:59. That's 1 minute before the end of the survey. After you calm down and explain to your survey partner what you saw or thought you saw, you both settle back for the remainder of the survey, which is 1 minute. What can you do differently to avoid alarming the PGU? Well, we are supposed to, according to Francis Wood, who started this whole thing, look like a log and act like a log. That means we have to be really quiet and really still. And how do we look like a log? Well, maybe I want to kind of identify with the PGU and wear something that they might feel comfortable with. No, not this. Or not this. What we want is neutral nature colors. Here's some browns and grays that will be perfect. So yeah, try not to be too outstandingly distinct in your colors of your clothes. Okay, I thought we needed a little break there. We'll go back up. Let's see, how much time do we have? A minute or two. Let's do at least one on counts. The survey starts at 7:30. At 7:30, there are 6 birds close to the bluff and 1 far out, which is not clear with the unaided eye. But with binoculars, you watch it repeatedly diving and or struggling to subdue any fish it catches. What do I write for my 7:30 count?
6.
Yeah, 6. We exclude the one that we cannot see clearly without binoculars. Now, at 8, that's our middle count. You notice there are 9 PGU in the water and also 2 far offshore that cannot be ID'd without binoculars. What's my count?
9.
9.
Yes. At age 17, there are 10 birds close to shore near your site. What do I do with that?
Notes.
10.
We're not going to count that because it's
Oh.
not the
Oh,
beginning, middle,
Yeah.
or end. I mean,
Good
unless
question.
it was something really extraordinary, like, at some point, then we would put it in the notes. But we used to count the high count. We don't do that anymore. So, unless it's a big, huge, something amazingly different, we don't do anything with that. Our final count is 8:30. There are 5 birds near our site. And what do we report? 5, yes. We have time for a disturbance, Terrence?
Sure.
Okay, the survey begins at 7:30 and ends at 8:30. At 8:08, an eagle lands in a tree near the bluff with the burrows. At 8:08, the PGU immediately fly much further out in the water. And then at 8:20, the eagle leaves. The birds return back about 8:25. So how do I record this disturbance? Somebody want to tackle that one?
I'll you'll write down like 8:08 as the disturbance start, and 8:20 or 8:25 as the disturbance end, and then you'll just write down the notes of the eagle and what the Pico did.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Kayla.
And a Y after the times.
That's right.
Oh, yes, the Y, meaning that it ended before the disturbance
Survey.
ended before the end of the, yeah, thank you, Al. Thanks. Okay, the next week, the survey starts at 8. At 8:14, an eagle lands in the tree. All the PGU fly away. The eagle does not leave until after the survey, and all the PGU stay out in the water and do not return to the breeding area during the survey hour. What am I going to write for that one?
The start and time, and then the end time of your survey, and make a note that they did not mark an end for not returning before the end of your survey.
That's right, Brenda. What do I write for the end time? I still have to write something. What do I write?
9 a.m.
Yeah, 9, because
The survey
right.
started at 8.
okay, good. And then following week, survey starts at 7:45. At 8:02, a motorboat roars through the area in front of the colony, quite close to shore, effectively splitting the group of 9 PGU. 4 birds stay close to shore. 5 birds fly further out. The 5 birds return close to shore at 8:18. What about this one?
You note the motorboat as the disturbance, and the time of 8:02, and then 8:18 for ending, and that it did end.
Right. And the reason we're counting this is because a majority, more than 40% of the birds were disturbed and returned. Which, there are times when some will be disturbed and some won't. That same survey, which started at 7:45, at 8:23, an eagle flies down the shoreline, past the bluff. 3 birds fly out. The other 6 ignore the eagle and stay close to shore. The 3 birds that flew away swim back a little bit, but they continue down the shoreline in the opposite direction. They don't return to the area. That one's got a little bit of messy information thrown in there. What do you think?
I wouldn't record it.
It's not a disturbance.
And the reason?
Most of the birds stayed put.
Yeah, most of the birds did not react. Okay, and then at 8:26, a seal swims lazily from the shore. The birds ignore the seal, but at 8:35, the seal swims in closer toward the PGU, and all the PGU swim much further out. After the seal leaves, the PGU return to their breeding area by 8:42, before the end of the survey. Somebody that hasn't had a chance, jump in. Even if you're new, take a guess.
It's a seal.
Really,
You would record the time of 8:35, which is when the PGU left initially, and then record the end time as 8:42.
Right. Yeah. At first, they didn't mind the seal. It was just out there swimming. But I have seen when a seal gets really close to birds, they'll move and swim away if they don't fly away, because they don't want to be lunched. That's all we're going to take time for now, and I can put these. We'll put these in the next email or something. We have a separate answer sheet, and so we'll make sure that we get this to you, so you can use it for reference. It just has some of the, stickier ones that we always have to take a second thought on. Okay, back to you, Terrence.
Yeah, we definitely encourage folks, like if you run into situations that you're just not sure what to do about, definitely bring it up with your team lead and then have your team lead get in touch with us. You can also just reach out directly to us if you want. But it's helpful to have that body of knowledge, because then we can kind of compile sort of a catalog, so to speak, of all the different scenarios that we normally run into. And that helps us with better understanding how to do the surveys on a consistent basis, because we understand that disturbances can be fairly nuanced, as you saw from some of these scenarios, just that, you know, they don't always react right away. They don't always react the same way. They don't always, you know, you have a variety of different disturbances that can happen. So, okay, let's see, there was a question in the chat. Let's see what that's about. Yes, we can, actually, John, if you want to throw the link in the chat again for where these documents will be located, with the exception of the mock scenario will be on our website, but we'll also kind of get everything into a centralized location. That way, you know, you can have it all there. But for now, the Use Deepzoom network is the location where you can find the other training materials for the datasheet, the protocol, datasheet instructions, and so on. Okay.
Maybe if you had a copy of an answer sheet for those mock scenarios, it would be something people could refer to. Or I don't know if you already have that. Something.
Yep. Anne is going to.
Yes, I do. I have an answer sheet.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
So
what you want me to do, Terrence,
sending out.
you'll put them on the website and I'll send them out in the email, both.
Yep. We'll do both.
Okay, and that'll be our follow-up email to this. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm a newbie, and I do have one question, and maybe you've covered it, and I apologize. But if we record beginning, middle, and end, but then on the sheet, I also saw recordings of birds going in and out of the burrows at different times that weren't beginning, middle, or end. So do we do beginning, middle, and end just flying birds and then burrows at any time?
Yeah, so when you're doing your 3 counts, those are only for the birds that are on the water, on the beach, or on the bluff. If you know a bird is in the hole, we don't include that bird. So it's just the birds that are visible. The burrow activity, that is separate information that can then be recorded at any time. But your 3 start, middle, end counts, those are at a pretty standard predefined time. So, you know, if you start at 8, it's 8, 8:30, 9 o'clock. If you start earlier at a different time, your team lead will be the one to coordinate and make sure that, you know, when it rolls around to the decided start time, they will let everyone know, okay, you can start. And then when it gets to the middle, again, they'll let everyone know, okay, you can do your middle count. And then again at the end. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to logistics and colony team coordination. So we already had a couple questions about the Survey 123 training. So it's in the chat, and we'll compile this all in the follow-up message. So for folks who anticipate doing data entry, we definitely encourage you to attend the training if you're able to, but it's going to be recorded. So that'll be something that you can view later if you aren't able to attend. For folks who are going to be doing quality control, Mainly, it's going to be myself, John, Ann, and the interns. There will be the regional administrator account training the following Wednesday. And again, that will also be recorded. So if you can't make it, no sweat. Okay.
Terrence,
Yeah.
also, if there's new team leaders who were not a designated team leader before, they have a pull down menu on survey 1, 2, 3, and we need to get those names added at
Correct.
ASAP. So if you know you're going to be a team leader that you haven't been before, and that would include the interns, we do need to get your name on that pull down menu. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, and let's see. We talked about the debrief sessions already, so I'll just follow up with mentioning that ideally the data sheets should all be given to the team lead. That way we don't have any stragglers. This is something that we found was an issue at some colonies that resulted in delay for the data entry and then the subsequent data validation. So, if you have somewhere to be right away, just make sure that before you leave, you get your data sheet to the team lead. And then if need be, the team lead can then follow up with you afterwards to reconcile any issues that might be on your specific sheet. So team lead is something that's a volunteer basis. Obviously, if you're going to be gone, this is something that you want to coordinate either internally with your teammates, or if there isn't anyone who feels comfortable with assuming that role, reach out to us, and we can usually have one of the interns go out and they can be the substitute team lead. They'll probably still rely on you to be the colony experts, knowing where to survey and all that, but they'll be the ones who will lead the post-survey meetings and collect all the data sheets and then compile and enter the data and so on and so forth. Something we didn't mention is the Prey ID guide. I think when you see the guide, it'll be pretty self-explanatory. Really kind of talk about the key differences between the different types of fish. So if you're ever not sure about fish that you're seeing, hopefully your team lead can help you with that. If not, reach out to us and we can chat with you to sort that out. I already mentioned brochures that we have here at the Nature Center. So if you need some or you want some, let us know. And you can contact us at the PIGU email to make that arrangement. I and John and the interns all have access to that email, or will have access. And then a little bit of other housekeeping. So we definitely encourage folks to keep track of their volunteer time. That's really important to us. A lot of the work with this project is grant funded, and so we need to report out to the grant funders. And this is one of the ways that we report out, is just letting them know, hey, this is what we've done. This is how many volunteers are involved with this program. This is how many hours they put in. We're also able to leverage those hours for additional funding, which is key for this program. So we've been doing this for 10 years, and we want to be able to continue to do this for another 10 or more. And so, yeah, just make sure that you're able to keep track of that. Also, for new people, if you need a parking display for your car, we can provide that for you. And Also, if you don't already have a pair of binoculars, or maybe you have a pair and you find out, oh, these aren't really the greatest. We have a lot of pairs that are available for loan. So again, email us or contact us by phone, and we can get you a pair. And you can probably just borrow that for the whole season because we have quite a few. So, okay, let's see. Cover that. And all right. I'm gonna kind of just open it up for any other questions that we didn't already cover.
Terrence, I do have the bottom half of the tray card that shows just the gunnels and the sculpin. For the new people, I can put that up on the screen, you know, to take a look at.
Yeah, sure. We could do that really quick. We'll just give it a
Oh,
couple.
you want me to put it up now?
Yeah, just a quick 1 or 2 minute run through.
So there's, ignore the very, very top. Can you see this?
Yeah, we can see that.
So the top row is gunnels. See how they're snaky, wormy, eel-like. Bottom row is sculpin, heavy head, spiny, pointy tail, kind of triangle shape. And notice the PGU's mouth is open much wider to hold the big head of a sculpin, where hardly at all with the gunnel. So just for you new folks, that's kind of what you're looking at. And the birds will sit in the water generally fairly close, but you can use your binoculars, you know, to zoom in on that fish. And usually you'll have a fair amount of time to look at it. You're not expected to identify them in flight because that's literally impossible almost for anyone, even experts. And so, yeah, you have time to look at the fish and get it figured out.
Yeah, I think the key will be when there are multiple birds with multiple fish on the water at the same time. That's where you're going to need to work together and really kind of keep a close eye, because they can be a little tricky at times, and they'll do a flyby and then they'll go back out to the water, and then maybe while you're watching that bird, you know, another bird decides to take off. So yeah, when the birds are on the water, that's the key to being able to do the fish ID and then, you know, track the birds to whatever burrow they end up delivering to, if they deliver at all. And if they don't, that's good information to record in the notes. See, any other questions here? Well, not seeing any. You know, if folks come up with questions later, feel free to reach out. Let us know. I will mention before we wrap this up, we're still in the process of scheduling surveys. If you have, I mean, I know Christina has been reaching out to most everyone by now. Christina's one of our other interns. She couldn't be here today, but she's helping with a lot of behind the scenes work. So you'll probably be hearing from her in the future weeks. Our other two interns who are here with us today, Madison and Kayla, you'll be hearing from them next month when they are officially starting. But for now, we'll be coordinating through Christina to get everyone's schedules. And the sooner that we can get that, the better, because there's some other aspects of the scheduling that hinge upon having that information. So we will definitely be following up with folks next week, either via email or by phone. And for folks who are new and don't yet have a team, we will also be reaching out to you to figure out what your availability is and where we can put you, and what sort of resources that you'll be meeting to be able to get out and do a survey. We'll also see if it might be possible to try and schedule some sort of a preseason practice survey, so that way you can kind of get your feet wet. And I will offer up too that there is some opportunity for getting out and doing boat surveys. It's something we do fairly regularly at a handful of colonies. So if that's something that you're interested in and not really having a regular site, let us know. I know some of you here are already involved with that, so I already know who you are. Yeah, so. All right, well, it is 8:58. We don't need to go all the way to noon, but I want to thank everyone for coming today. We hope you found this training informative and detailed enough to allow you to go out there and confidently do the surveys. So we hope you have a fantastic season. We look forward to hearing all the reports of what you see out there. And you'll definitely be hearing from us throughout the season. We generally send out weekly email updates starting in June. And yeah, you're more than welcome to reach out to us with any needs, questions, or concerns. So with that, we will let you all depart. We will hang on. So if there's anyone who wants to chat with us,
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good to meet you, Madison and Kayla.
It's
So,
nice to
Martha,
meet you
did you have a
too.
question?
I was wondering if we needed to go through the Deepzoom like mini training.
Yeah, we could certainly do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Terrence, real
How
quick, do
deep
you want me
did
to
you-
keep recording this?
Yeah, Madison's asking about Deepzoom. So we'll record Deepzoom and then we can pause that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up Deepzoom on my window. That way.
And for anybody who wants to, I put a link in the chat to Deepzoom. So
Okay. Oh, hold on. Let me share my screen. That would help. Okay. Sharing. And screen 2. Okay. All right. So deepzoom.com. It usually defaults to some place. Oh, that's unexpected. Okay, restore this tab. That's weird. Okay, loading. No, that's very bizarre. Okay, that does not normally happen. Okay, refresh. Okay, well, I don't know why Deepzoom's not working on mine. John, do you want to do this one? I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, Mike.
there, can you see it?
Yep, we can see that.
Okay. So Deepzoom, basically, it's interactive map. And you'll see around here, you've got these little boxes here, and these boxes are tide stations. And that's
that's basically the most, well, not the most important, but one of the most important things is you want to get the right tide station. So if there's ever confusion, especially for, like the interns and stuff, you can go to the document we have that has the tides spelled out that we use to set up surveys, and it'll tell you what station is associated with each site. So this is DuPont Wharf. It's a fairly common one we use for Lyle and some other ones. And so you'll click on that little piece there, and then you can see over on the right-hand side, you've got basically your tide chart. So today is May 6th, and it's telling you exactly what the tide is right now at 12:01 p.m. We're at a negative tide, 1.3. So if we were doing a survey today, let's say we were doing a survey at 8 o'clock, you can adjust it to the specific time where the tides or where the survey started. So there's 8:01 and it says 10.2. So that would be our starting tide if we were doing a survey at 8 o'clock there. And then you can change the date. You can click on the date here to go back. So here's May 4th, right? And you can just adjust all that setup as far as, oh, we did a survey, no one took the tide, so I need to go back. So you can check it. Again, you use the slider here to find the start of the survey. So let's say you did a 7 o'clock survey that day, and 7 or 10.7 is the tide. And then I don't know how familiar you guys are reading tide charts. So anytime on Deepzoom that there isn't a negative, it's a plus tide. And then you'll be able to tell accordingly what the ebb and flow is looking at the chart. So you can see here, the tide's going out. So we would put on the sheet an outgoing tide because it's going in from 10 or from 7 in the morning until 8. You can see it goes further out. So, and then an incoming tide would just be if we started it super early, like here, you can see that it's going in. And the big thing to remember is it's what the tide's doing when the survey starts. So you don't have to get too fancy with it. If we had a tide starting at, say right here, you can see at 5:47, for example, it's going to be an outgoing tide before the survey would be over, but that doesn't really matter. What we just need to know, it's a snapshot in time, what that tide is when the survey starts. So, and if you don't want to use the calendar because you're going, you're doing a bunch of stuff, you can click over here where you can see my mouse is, and it'll adjust 7 days behind or 1 day behind, and plus days, both 7 and 1. Yeah, it's pretty simple. This is all you're going to use. And then you just go around according to what tide station. So here's Devil's Head, another one that we use. And why you need the right station is because realistically, our tides are different between stations, sometimes very minimal, but actually depending on what station it is, there can be a difference of several feet as far as tides go. So it's good to be on the right spot. Now, do you guys have any questions? It's really simple. Like if you get on and play with it, you will have it down in 30 seconds. So don't get too worried about this. And the reality is this thing is awesome. Like it's the best tide chart unless you know how to read like manual charts. This is the best tide program I've ever seen. So it's really cool. And you'll become very familiar with it.
Just to clarify, so you said when it's going down, that like decreasing, then that means the tide is going out. And then when it
Yep.
starts increasing again, it's coming back in.
It's coming in. Yep.
Okay.
And you want us
And-
to write that in the notes, like, oh, like, you know, it's coming out or going in like in the notes, or
No, you won't. There's a whole section. If you look at the data sheet, there's a whole section that talks about tides where you put in what the tide is, you put in if it's a plus or minus tide, and then you put in if it's incoming or outgoing. So it'll prompt you for everything you need. And that's one of those things too, depending on, you guys are probably going to do some quality control. That's one of the things you're going to definitely hone in on quality control, because unfortunately, many people don't even want to mess with tides, so they don't fill it out at all. Or they grab their phone and they're looking at the tide charts for somewhere in Tacoma or Seattle versus somewhere around here. So it can get off pretty easily. So it'll be a section that you'll want to double check every single time you're doing quality control.
So all that relates to what you put on the data sheet. Now, you're going to be doing surveys as well. In that case, when we're planning for our outing, we have to look a little more carefully. Most times we need below a 10 for most locations, because if it's high tide, you can't get to the beach. And in those cases, we often have to change the date or do a boat survey. But you want to look from the time you start walking to the beach until the time you are off the beach. So let's say 7:30, you walk to your site and then survey till 9, from 8 to 9, and then you walk back till 9:15 or 9:20. You have to be able to access and then exit safely. So you got to look at both of those times to see if there's a good range, if it's within, the accessible tide for your site. And we also do write that on the same document John mentioned. We usually write what the accessible tide is for that colony.
So yeah, just a sec, I can throw up one of those, the document, at least from last year. If you give me a second so you can.
Yeah, you can go ahead and stop recording, John.